I had this complaint about the Jon Moxley stuff. Might as well just like dive into it because it opens up the show practically, right? Well, no, it does open up the show, come to think of it. Just because you put Jon Moxley and his group in doing disgusting things in the main event doesn't necessarily mean that it feels like the most important angle on the show. And it should be the most important angle on the show. And it's been billed as the most important angle on the show. And they have been promoting it as the most important angle on the show. When they do the graphics, right, for the announcing stuff, I mean, they do signs, right? Warning signs, Mox is here or Mox is coming. I don't remember. And I'm like, okay. But then Mox shows up for like, again, one episode where it's all the lower mid-carders. It's like all the J-Browns just hanging around and who are hanging around for him, right? Like, the show, because when the show opens up, let's attach this directly to this week's episode as opposed to me just talking in vagaries. You start the show here. You've got the entire lower mid card who pops out, right? Who are there, and they're, everywhere from Top Flight, Action Andretti, the Dark Order, Jay Lethal, and you look at this agglomeration of people, and you're like, and they all have weapons, right? They all have weapons. They're all weaponed up. They're all ready to swing their weapons. They can't, because they're J-Browns. They're geeks, so they can't take on Jon Moxley and crew, with fisticuffs. They have to get the pipes. They have to get the crowbars, the nunchucks. Look, we're gonna get. So we have this agglomeration of people that are there that Jon Moxley and crew have been punking out for weeks at this point. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't care. Like, these guys are not going to do anything. They haven't been able to do anything over the past couple of weeks. I see right through this. And I was like, look, they're probably not even going to come in through the parking lot. They're going to come in through another entrance because it's a big, it's an arena. It's a 12,000 seat arena. There's more than one way to get into the building. Like, these are all dopes. Like, at some point, am I supposed to be against Mox? Because if Mox is saying, I want to change things in AEW, and he's railing against, if you're not with us, you're against us, and the people who are against him are just like the dopiest dopes that ever doped. I'm like, sure, like, I'm going to side with Mox on this. It won't be that hard. Like, I don't understand it. It's a very strange setup that they have going here. So when Mox does arrive at the end, right? Well, who's he taking out? Yeah, who's he taking out? Private Party? Again? Like, who cares? Right? Daniel Garcia, maybe a little more, but it's not as if they're establishing Daniel Garcia as a force of nature here either. It's not as if they've taken it upon themselves to make Daniel Garcia feel like the leader of the resistance. And this could be easily fixed, super easily fixed, by having Dan Garcia, instead of hanging out with the fucking Private Party losers who have been established as losers before the match with the Young Bucks and lost the match to the Young Bucks. Like, these guys are losers. Instead of him hanging out with them, he should be beating up other people. He should be like, give me Yuta, and beating the piss out of Yuta. Like, right now, the problem with the Mox arc is that there is no one stepping up to be the strong leader or the strong opposition. Now, we've clearly established on last night's show that Orange Cassidy is going to be the guy. Like this, Moxley versus Cassidy at Full Gear. Like I think that's a fairly safe call at this point. But up until this point, Mox has been running through the mid card, the lower mid card on top of that, and everyone's like, well, sure. Now, if Mox were running through Adam Cole, if Mox were running through Will Ospreay, or I was going to say the Elite, but nonetheless, running through established guys that have a certain level of protection, instead of guys who just like either are in and out of spots and of feuds, either that or just like the Dark Order, who are perennial jobbers in this company. It's like, this has no impact. I'm not feeling the gravitas of this. Taking Danielson out, hell yeah. Like, absolutely yes. I'd say even at this point, them destroying Jeff Jarrett would create more sympathy for the other side. But like Daniel Garcia came out to his match and he had an AEW t-shirt on, and then commentary was saying, oh yeah, coming out with his AEW colors, trying to rally the troops. I'm like, outside of that one segment last week, what has he been doing? Like, why would you throw your support behind Daniel Garcia, where you're like, well, what are you doing, Daniel? You're doing run-ins, sure. Does this make sense? Like, hopefully I'm making sense here. Because, right, there is no, let's break it down maybe a little simpler. There's no protagonist for the audience to get behind. Now, again, we established that Orange Cassidy is going to be the guy to step up. But why, in this type of argument, why hasn't anyone else stepped up to the plate? Why hasn't anyone else? Now, I know they're probably saving some big names, some big returns, maybe down the road. You could see Kenny Omega coming out of nowhere and saying, enough's enough. They're teasing the Bucks may be having a crisis of conscience, right? But right now, we're just continuously beating up the same guys week after week. I'm like, and these guys are not putting up a resistance, putting up a wall, and then having this through line throughout the evening where I'm like, no one cares. Like, who cares? Who could possibly care about this? What if Swerve stepped up? See, Swerve would have been a great candidate, because he even did that when it was time for Blood and Guts, where he was like, I'm going to lead Team AEW, or Mark Briscoe, but they're involved in their own things on the side. So you've got all these guys who would be really great fits into, this Infinity War situation. But like, it's legitimately, if you look with the Infinity War, with the comparison here, it's as if, in the movie, you had the Infinity War, but instead of having Captain America and Iron Man and Thor, on the front lines, you had, who was leading it? Ant-Man and, whoever the fuck else, the stone guy from the Thor movies. What is it? Korg? And, Deadpool. Deadpool's cool though. Do you get the comparison? Like, we have Thanos on the other side, and we're sitting in Paul Rudd to take him out. No disrespect to Paul Rudd. It's a weird type of situation, if you ask me. And it's still not, like, I get what they're doing, and when Mox cuts his promos, and here's the thing, here's the great dichotomy of this situation. When Mox cuts his promos, they're compelling. They're tremendous. The thing he did in the desert, just fantastic stuff. Like, it really is. It is genuinely great. But then the execution is like, well, it's Mox beating up jobbers. Like, who cares? Like, it's okay for, a week or two, but we're still doing this, and it's only the jobbers who are standing up to him. And quite frankly, here's the thing that really, maybe this is just a little thing. Well, actually, it is a little thing. But sometimes it's the little things, right? Sometimes it's the little things. Here's something that really ground my gears. John Silver, look, they're established. This is the biggest storyline in the company. It's a serious storyline. This guy is choking people out with plastic bags, right? Like, he destroyed Bryan Danielson. Like, this is supposed to be this most serious angle in the company. And they are establishing Mox's group as killers, right? Killers. So you have John Silver hanging out with the rest of the J-Brones, and he's got nunchucks, right? Everyone has really plausible things that they just picked up. And of course he has nunchucks. And immediately I'm like, this is not serious. And he's spinning them around and you're like, this is not serious. And this is supposed to be serious. And he's in the forefront, like he's on the front line and he's doing his thing. And later on in the evening, you know, when later on in the evening, he's talking with someone. You can hear him say, "I'm gonna nunchuck you." When Christian Cage arrives, he says, "I'm gonna nunchuck you." You're like, dude. Like, we understand nunchucks are funny. We understand. I'm gonna nunchuck. I get it, but in the circumstance, you are angry. You're supposed to be angry, maybe anxious, a little afraid, because these guys are all nuts. That's why you're all in a posse right now, all armed to the teeth with stuff that you picked up backstage. You're like, oh, nunchucks, haha. Like, he's going for the ha-has. And so again, I'm like, why should I care about these people that Jon Moxley and crew is going to run through? And I like the Dark Order. Look, I got the whole Dark Order guys over here. I like the Dark Order. I always have. But someone should have just told John, hey, no jokes, no funny stuff. We know you're a funny guy and you like the comedy and that's what keeps you over, kind of thing. But this is not the time or the place. So I watched this and I'm like, just plow right through. And when Marina Shafir arrived, I was like, why doesn't she just push on the gas? It doesn't matter. Like, you understand, not for real, not, run them over with a truck for real. But, I'm like, why I don't care. I don't care about these people. I just don't. And there's nothing for me to really latch on to. So as I said, moving forward, they have clearly established that Orange is going to be the first guy out the gate. He's going to be he's going to be the challenger of the month, right? They have Daniel Garcia who's hanging around as well. But Garcia has been doing jack shit, and then they pull him out for a trios match in which, he basically wrestles, but the whole centerpiece is Private Party getting a win back on the Bucks so they can challenge them for the tag titles again. So Daniel Garcia is kind of like, an afterthought. He's got his little thing with Jack Perry, but Jack Perry has nothing to do with the Mox stuff. And I know Perry is sort of establishing, like they're breadcrumbing a little bit, where Jack Perry, the Bucks seem worried, but Jack Perry's like, nah, forget this shit. Come on, let's go backstage. Who cares, So maybe eventually Jack Perry ends up on Mox's side because he realizes, the Bucks are, a couple of goofs. Like, I still think here's we were talking about dichotomies. Here's one right here. I still think it is the most compelling angle in AEW right now. I think it has its problems to get itself over because I think the angle should be hotter than this. But I feel like we're establishing the story, we're establishing the pattern, but this has been going on for a couple of weeks without any story bumps. There hasn't been any story bumps. Don't get make sure that we understand this. This is something I used to talk about a while back, where you have the impression that there's a story being told week after week, but you're still running in place. We're exactly at the same place we were last week. There's nothing new outside of, the intrigue around Orange Cassidy, but there hasn't been a storyline bump. So frankly, like, I'm giving this one a lot of rope, but I guess I want to care more about this than what AEW is, how AEW is approaching making me care for this. Does that make sense? I want to be invested in this, but I couldn't give a shit. I couldn't give a shit about, Jay Lethal getting beat up in the parking lot, whether he's going to be able to do it or not. Like, I don't care. These people don't matter to me. Well, they matter as humans, but as on-screen characters is what I'm saying. And I was like, this is the thing. I'm not wishing harm or, on any of these people, but as characters, right? We're talking within the environment, this entertainment product that I'm watching. I'm not invested in these characters, in these wrestlers here, because AEW has told me not to be invested in them because they're nerds, they're geeks. They're jabrones. Who cares? And Mox has been handily taking care of them as well, week after week. So, like, it all just doesn't matter.